the idea of working as one rather than in competition or suspicion of one another was a real challenge.
In 1999, Cardinal Francis George of the Archdiocese of Chicago knew that the time had come to think differently about how his parishes should come together in giving. Uniting over 300 individual parishes to raise $200 million was the daunting task at hand.
Priests generally dislike the idea of asking people for money. And so when they thought that this campaign was going to require them to ask their people for a lot of money and put a lot of pressure on them, they didn't like that at first.
This is a very, sort of a homegrown church and a homegrown clergy here who prides itself in doing things well, and they've had a wonderful tradition of providing leadership in the parishes. We grew up in Chicago, we know Chicago, we live here in Chicago. So I think it was a pretty much of a new idea that had to be sold to the pastors and the archdiocesan leadership.
There was a feeling that it passed down through priests that was kind of inherent in the clergy of Chicago, that to be suspicious of any campaign that came from downtown. The idea was that we know how to raise money best with our own people. And so the idea of a group coming in and a group being paid to come in was even more suspicious.
So there was reluctance on the part of pastors and many other people in the Archdiocese. But when they saw how the consultants work with them, the passion that they bring, how much they care for the individual parishes, for the pastors, for the life of the church, it made all the difference.
Back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus.
We were lucky enough to have Dwayne Martin as our consultant, and he was just a gem. He's a person of deep faith, for one thing, and people really got to know him and love him on a very personal basis as well. We still keep in touch and talk once in a while. And that became the real turning point for us. His faith story and his witness was so compelling that it made all the difference in the world to our people, which were a mix of Hispanics and Anglo people.
We really adopted Dwayne as part of the parish family. He got a good sense of our spirit, and we got the benefit of his expertise. So it really was something that remained spiritual and that respected the charisms and the spiritual gifts of this community in terms of how we could take this and develop it for ourselves.
Development, fundraising, stewardship, those things we've had very little training in. And it was very good to have a consultant, Angel, who worked with us, kind of was always there to answer questions, to encourage me, to calm me down.
The overwhelming majority are most grateful for it because it has helped them to see what's possible. I think that some of them thought that we really couldn't do something like this, and now that we have, they are also open to other possibilities. So it's been tremendously life-giving.
The possibility of raising $200 million was becoming a reality.
People were not at all convinced that they would be able to raise the money and do the building, but in fact they were surprised, enormously surprised at the success of the campaign. I think surprised that what was really a small number of 400 or 500 people would be able to raise almost $2 million.
I think the surprise to us is that we not only raised the numbers and more that we thought, but that the sense that people have and pastors have is very positive. Usually you sometimes get, yeah, I'll give you $20 or $100, but you feel a certain begrudging sense about that, or and don't come back for a while. And so I think the stewardship side of this, I think the fact that it comes in a broader faith context has made the numbers impressive, but also I think the generativity and the sense of response that we've gotten from the people has just been great.
But more than the financial end of the campaign, it's really kind of helped to coalesce our parish, to bring our community together in beautiful ways.
The diocese has been successful in raising over $200 million because it happened all across the Archdiocese. It wasn't just one or two or three significant areas of the diocese, but people in the inner city and people as well as in the outskirts of the diocese and the edge of the diocese. Parishes in all different shapes and sizes and forms were able to respond, that collectively people were able to be a part of the program. That's why it's been so successful.
We delight in law of your word. We delight in Son who was perfect from birth.
I don't think there's any question that the Millennium Campaign has deeply touched the lives of millions of people in the Archdiocese of Chicago.
We know that if the Lord is working in our hearts and minds, we are generous, but we haven't tested that in quite this way for a long time. And now we know that the Lord is working because a lot of people are generous.
It was very much a death to new life experience, and that whole sense of trust and moving to an area where just 5 years ago no one ever thought anybody would be situated.
The big success story is that we had a $200 million goal. We raised $242 million, making it the most successful diocesan capital campaign in the history of the Catholic Church. I love to say that.
I relied on volunteers, parish members talking to parish members, trying to make the case that this is not only about responding to parish needs, leaky roofs, boilers, school additions, but the fact that the language of giftedness in response to that, I think helped to, reinvigorate in some way the faith life of some of the local parishes.
And after they learned the culture and the politics and the players of the Archdiocese of Chicago, their professionalism took over from there, and I felt very comfortable knowing that they weren't going to upset the apple cart, and they were going to be successful without my supervision all the time.
It bases all of its programming on principles of Christian stewardship. And it invites people not just to give money, but to give themselves, to give their heart and their soul.
There are always pockets in all our lives where we guard ourselves and we haven't handed those things over to the Lord. And I think that watching this develop in the parishes and hearing the reports challenged me to examine those pockets again and to respond with the kind of total generosity that a disciple is supposed to have.
I can only imagine when all I would do is forever worship you. I can only imagine.